Welcome to this edition of special edition of Abir Samvaad. Today we have Ashok Vajpai ji with us for this interview. Uh, he's a known name. He's a significant contributor into culture. He founded Bharat Bhavan. He's one of the most important literary persons in Hindi. He has 13 editions of his collected works, which is still going. Welcome Ashok ji to from Abir. He also has the Raza Foundation, by the way, which is like the significant part, and where we'll start talking about the art stuff. That how Raza Foundation is contributing into Indian art as of now.
Well, Raza Sahab was very deeply concerned, remembering his old days of hard struggle in Mumbai when he was a young artist, and even in Paris later. So he was deeply concerned about the younger generations of artists, not merely visual arts, but also poetry, music, dance. So the basic mandate of the Raza Foundation, as we created it, is to provide help, promotion, some kind of a critical sustenance to the younger talent. So we do a series of activities which feature young. Recently, for instance, we did a major show of 100 young artists of India at 5 galleries simultaneously in Delhi. This is the largest ever show of young artists, well curated by as many as 5 commissioners. We followed it by an exhibition of 20 young tribal artists from all over the country. And sometime later this week, we open in the India International Center the first ever, perhaps, comprehensive exhibition of the Gone art, largely featuring young artists, young tribal artists.
Yes.
So this is one part. We do every year a kind of a colloquium of young Hindi writers. We have done about 4 or 5 sessions every year, per year. And we are doing next one next month in Mandla, where Raza is buried. And we have already featured about 200 young artists picked up from all over the country. Young Hindi writers. So there's a lot that we do by way of that. And we have engaged a large many young people to write biographies of eminent writers who are no more there. We do a series called Arambh, in which we invite young professional dancers and musicians, classical, and present them. We do a festival called Uttaradhikar every year, in which we ask the eminent gurus to recommend their young disciple, and we present them as artists who are inheriting a great tradition. So there's a lot of this that keeps on happening. I may add that the other day, Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh publicly said that what Raza Foundation is doing singly is what the 3 national academies are not able to do jointly.
Clearly. So one of the things is that Raja Saab himself also, like, when he was there, he also contributed majorly to loads of increasing artists. The second thing is that he was also equally probably invested and engaging with people who were in music and
Yes.
in literature.
You see, Raza was a very unique personality. His hunger, thirst for knowing others was unfathomable. So anything that he had missed out during his youth, he was very keen to take it inside him, in a manner of speaking, retrospectively. So he used to have meet young musicians, young dancers, and of course poets and things. In fact, he was so deeply interested in Hindi poetry that one of my jobs when I used to visit him twice a year to carry with me new books of poetry that might have appeared in Hindi. And so he was a person who was in a sense, both modern but also deeply Indian. An Indian who inherited the interdependence of the arts, which was the normal phenomena on the Indian scene until the end of the 19th century. It so happened that the end of 19th century, when the West propelled modernism started, then music and dance became classical, and theatre and literature and visual arts became modern. So a kind of a divorce took place, which we have not been able to undo in spite of many attempts.
You had a very long engagement with him, like talking about going to him twice or meeting him when he's here. So, what is how do you describe your association with Raza?
Well, my association with him started by the fact that I invited him on behalf of the government of Madhya Pradesh to honor him. He belonged to Madhya Pradesh, and he held his first ever show in his home state for the first time in Bhopal. And we honored him on behalf of and we had a seminar on him and a publication on him. And it was there that I had published a small book of poems, my first book, and very reluctantly I gave him a copy.
शहर भी संभावना है.
हाँ, शहर भी संभावना.
Yeah.
And after about a year, I once get a trunk call from him saying that he wanted to use one of his poems, my poems, in his painting. It is an iconic painting, 1981, largely known as Ma, but it has this line, Ma laut kar jab aunga kya launga, which is a line from one of the poems in that book. So his interest in poetry and my vulnerability to arts, they played a role. And I realized that his modernism was not run-of-the-mill modernism. Modernism, the world over, is known by its by dominance of tension, disruption, dislocation, violence, etc. In case of Raza, the modernism that he practiced, and therefore I call it an alternative modernism, was of consonance, of silence, of peace, of togetherness. One. Two, Raza's relationship with nature was unique. He thought nature is the real world, that the humans have been allowed somehow by accidents of history or biology to inhabit. So he had a sense of deep reverence for nature. And that's how he and his wife, Janine Monchila, the French artist, they together searched a place in south of France, in French Riviera, very close to Nice, Cannes, Antibes, these well-known places, a place called Garbio, where, again, the nature unviolated, undisturbed, in its peaceful exuberance existed. So, in a manner of speaking, he used to say that I live here as if I live in Narsinghpur, Mandla, Kakaiya, they're all here because I have been able to. So he had a very deep. Now, most modernisms the world over have been based on the divergence between man and nature. In case of Raza, there is no such divergence. In fact, there is a submergence
Wow.
of nature in the Homo sapien and Homo sapiens in nature. So it was an alternative. He would never mention Narmada was the river of his childhood, and he would never mention Narmada as Narmada. He always say Narmada Ji. And if I by mistake sometimes mention Narmada like that, he will immediately say, no. So there was this. So here was a modernism which has an element of celebration, unlike other versions of modernism. Modernism is not known to be celebrative.
Yeah.
It's known to be disruptive and interrogative of what you have. But here was a modernism which was celebrating. So he was a very different artist altogether.
And what was the exchanges you would have? Like, what conversations you were having with him?
Oh, we had conversation about all things. We talked about Ghalib, about Kabir, about Ibn Fua, Baudelaire, Polish poets, Indian poetry, about Agay, about Muktibodh. You see, then again, Raza has more or less 100 canvases in which he has used either lines of poetry or words of poetry in Devanagari. He has inscribed. And he used to take a lot of effort to make it right. To write it and make it and see that the spellings are right and all that. It includes verses from Sanskrit and Upanishad, from medieval poets like Kabir and Tulsidas and Ghalib and Mir, and go on to Agay, Muktibodh, even me. So he had a wide range of this, and no other modern artist that I know of in the world has given the word such an autonomous existence on the canvas itself.
Yeah, at the same time, I also don't remember anybody who was so invested in Indianism of our aesthetics and traditions.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he was a Muslim. So, and when you see it
You
today,
see, he was tri-religious and trilingual. Tri-religious in the sense he was a Muslim and never left his faith. He incorporated Hindu concepts, Hindu metaphysics in his art, and he was also very deeply interested in Christianity. When he came to finally spend his last years in Delhi, we had to locate a temple, a church, and a masjid, which he would visit every week. So this is what his tri-religiosity. He was trilingual. He wrote and spoke such wonderful Hindi.
Amazing. I mean, almost it's like just as if he's reading poems, basically.
Yeah. And secondly, French. Thirdly, English. So if somebody from Europe rang him up, he would talk in English. Somebody Frenchman, French. But if anybody rang him up from India, or an Indian rang him up from anywhere, he will talk to him or her in Hindi. So he had this. He embodied a plurality in a certain sense in his daily life and in his art and in his vision.
You have also closely worked with Swaminathan Saab. He's like also another giant,
Yes.
and he has so much contributions to uh, your founding days from Bharat Bhavan and later on. How is
You see, Swaminathan was a very restless, uh, irrepressible soul. But Swaminathan was deeply interrogative of the Western dominance, both of art and ideas. If you recall, he started as a Marxist. He was a member of the Congress Socialist Party. Then he moved on to the Communist Party. But then he left all this. He left politics altogether and took entirely to art. But he did not leave his interrogative spirit. Once we were discussing something, and Swami suddenly said, I want to make a museum of the Western man. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, Western man has museumized all non-Western men. Now our turn has come that we should put the Western man in the museum. So, he had this kind of a. Second thing was, he did not believe in history. He believed in simultaneity of time. And therefore, he used to say and assert that in art there is no progress. You cannot say that somebody today or a body of work today is more advanced in spite of the techniques and technologies than, let us say, Ajanta, or more advanced than Khajuraho, or more advanced than whatever, miniatures. There is no progress in art. And he used to cite, just as there is no progress in religion. They keep on, if you have the same, you cannot say that today the spiritual thought is more advanced than what is embodied in Gita, or more advanced than given in Quran or in Bible or whatever. The other thing was that following from this, he was not willing to accept the notion that the tribals are those people who have been left behind by history. He was not accepting. His notion was that they are as contemporary, as modern as any other. The so-called urbanized masses, and that they are, and he would cite any number of examples to say that the tribals in their behavior and conduct are more civilized, more considerate of both nature and man than the urban lot. Therefore, in Bharat Bhavan, through Bharat Bhavan, we tried, under the influence of both Swaminathan and Karanth, redefine modernity. That modernity is not the exclusive domain of the urban. That modernity is equally shared by the non-urban, by the rural, by the folk, by the tribal. So he created a museum which had both tribal and folk art, more than 1,000 works collected at that time, and urban art. So you had Pema Fatya and Govindlal Jhara and
Jangarh and
Bhuri Bai and what you have, and you had Akbar Padamsi and Raza and Hussain and Ram Kumar and Krishan Khanna. Now this had never happened institutionally before Bharat Bhavan. Sadly, it did not happen after Bharat Bhavan either. So this is one. The second thing was that, therefore, he gave equal respect, equal place to the folk and the tribal. It's what we watched with some amazement. Sometimes when rural folk or tribal people came to Bharat Bhavan and they went around, they were not amazed by or intrigued or shocked by the abstract art. For them, it was a natural thing. They keep on doing abstraction all the time. It was the culturally illiterate middle class people who would say कि ये क्या है, udbilav hai कि क्या है. This sort of a question was never asked by the tribal or the folk. So they were more readily amenable to the abstraction than the urban.
I remember you talking long back, sometime in Nagpur in '92, talking about this educational literacy and cultural literacy, that how they are like actually they are eating into each other.
Yes,
and
yes,
and,
yes,
and
yes.
probably this is
Yes. You see, what has happened is that our entire educational system, hangs in a cultural void. Schools are designed and function as temporary jails. The gate is closed and uniforms and this, that, and the other. Everything like a jail or a hospital.
Yeah, regimented
regimented and all that. Whereas the experiments, some of the great experiments that took place, for instance, in Shantiniketan, classes were held under the tree, which is what was happening in India before. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have proper buildings and all that, but everything has been designed to make a regimented, disciplined mind. And I think a lot of what is happening in India today, in terms of violence, crime rates going up, murders, rapes, hatred, hate speeches, are all products of an education system. And mind you, most of these people are educated. Education system which gives you no sense of what a cultured, civilized human being should be.
I think it's meant to dehumanize us too.
Yeah, so, in a sense, it cuts into, and everything then becomes, there is a tyranny of uniformity.
Yeah.
Already set in by market forces, by consumerism, same kind of food, same kind of drawing room, same kind of music, same kind of television program, everything more or less the same. So you become the same kind of animal without having the real touch of the great civilization to which you belong.
Going back to Swaminathan, you and this tribal story, I think it's about 30-35 years back from now, and now it has kind of found a kind of an orbit on its own. It's kind of become a very good body of work.
Yeah.
And so many young tribal artists are coming, and Raza Foundation is also like, how do you see it? Because this is one of the very original, authentic contribution of this partnership you had with Swaminathan and probably Bharat Bhavan, because nobody else actually kind of thought about it. And
you see, Bharat Bhavan played a big role. So what we were doing in visual arts, Karant was also doing the same thing in theatre. So, first ever full-length plays in Bundelkhandi, in Marwadi, in Malvi, and in Chhattisgarh were produced by Rangmandal under Karant. And what were these plays? Shudrak, Patrol Brecht, Simul Beckett. So the same principle was being followed, that the dialects of Hindi also are the most energetic, vital links of Hindi with reality, and therefore they should have a And that Brecht and Beckett and Schutter all can be performed in these languages. So this was one part. The second one was that Swami found Jangarh Singh Shyam, a boy who was breaking stones on the road when he was going to visit Patangarh. Now, Patangarh is a place where at one time the great anthropologist Warrior Alvin had lived. As you know, Warrior Alvin was a much married man. He would marry, father some children, and then leave.
Yeah.
So he took Jangarh Singh Shyam, took him to his village, and Swami brought Jangarh Singh Shyam to Bharat Bhavan. And new material, which the tribals had never seen, paper, color, pencil, this, that, and the other. And Jangarh Singh Shyam belonged to a tribe which is Gond Pradhan. Now, among the Gonds, the Pradhans are genealogical singers. So they sing the genealogy, कि पहले क्या था,
The chroniclers of their Gond history.
How the world was born, and this happened, that happened, Phalana Dev, Tikana Dev, and things of that kind. So he was a musical mind.
And he had the stories.
And I remember those stories. What happened, and this is the miracle, which is a recorded miracle. It is never happened, that a musical memory got converted into visual memory. And the visual memory, the visual art that is born, that is the Gond art as is widely known. There are something like 80 artists now. There might be more, but at least 80. And most of them belong to merely two districts, mainly Patangarh and some to Mandla. Now this is a strange new school of painting started, which my brother Udayan Vajpai had called Jangarh Singh Kalam.
Yeah.
There is a new kalam, like it used to be in the miniature. And if you look at the paintings, they are done with dexterity, with subtlety, with complete control over colors, with a language which communicates their own visual language.
Vibrance.
And vibrant. And they are telling the same stories which they would have been singing, now converted into visual images. So this is a great phenomena, and this is one of the most lasting contribution of Bharat Bhavan under Swaminathan.
Because one of the outcome later on is, I saw Bhajju Shyam's London book. I don't know if you. So he has gone to London and painted London, like putting the white man in museum. So by that Gond Bhajju, that he went and painted London like a Gond would see it. Like, so that's like amazing full circle of that journey. Coming to Bharat Bhavan, so why do you think India could not have such good replications or examples of creating such cultural centers?
See, in India, the cultural institutions are nobody's priority. The politicians, the bureaucrats, the businessmen, all categories have no concern for the establishment of such institutions, their sustenance, their professional inheritance, nobody's business. So we are suffering from that. At that time, many states wanted to have Bharat Bhavan. Maharashtra wanted, UP wanted, Bihar wanted, and their officials visited. And I remember one very senior bureaucrat, additional chief secretary level from Bihar came, and I asked him, sir, you go along sort of anonymously, see for yourself, and then on the last day, he come, he, we had a meeting, and he said, Ashok, I'm convinced we cannot do this in Bihar. I said, why Bihar? It's such a rich cultural. He said, no, that's not the point. The point is that this place is run so efficiently by such informality. So I said, I don't understand. What do you mean? He said, you are the trustee secretary, and your secretary culture also, and your secretary education also, and you don't have a room in Bharat Bhavan to sit. You sit under the tree and dispose of the files there. And I said, somebody came and he said कि आपने कहा था कि सारंगी मेला करना है, तो हमने उसका वो बना लिया है. तो पूछा कि कितने लोग हैं सारंगी बनाने वाले देश भर में, कहा 75 का पता चला है. उनका ठीक है, सबको बुलाइए, करेंगे. तो कहा कितना खर्च होगा, हमने पूछा कितना खर्च होगा, उसने कहा कि 3 लाख 3.5 लाख. और ठीक 3.5 लाख law files being there. This cannot happen because there's such informality and going on like that. Now the point was 40 years now. Exactly this year completes 40 years. 40 in first 9 to 10 years, Bharat Bhavan was on international map, and today it is not even on the regional map. Nobody bothers. I mean, Madhya Pradesh never had an institution of any international
Standing.
repute or standing. It has none today because Bharat Bhavan has been allowed to lapse into. So there you are. There is no professional inheritance. There is no respect for the professionals and all that. So today what is happening is, look at in the visual arts, some of the best museums are private.
Coming back to, I also wanted you to kind of maybe take us on a journey of experiencing art, because you've traveled globally, you have seen great works and met great people. So, any specific pieces of art which were like kind of very, which got your attention, and then you thought over it?
The world as a whole owns so much art that it is difficult in a lifetime, even if you're visiting art sites, museums, galleries, collections, displays, every single day of your life, you will not be able to exhaust the entire wealth. This is one. Secondly, all over the world, especially in the West, there's a deep and abiding concern for art as an important institutional framework of civilization, which is not here. Even our great museums which are made by the British, Indian Museum of Calcutta, they are in such bad shape. So this is the second. The third is that finally it is the civil society which has to. So what you see is civil society, by and large, is a society, at least the Indian civil society, is so bigoted, so narrow-minded, so culturally illiterate that it takes no interest in art. Some elements of the civil society do, and they once in a while take an initiative and create private institutions in art, whether in music or dance, whatever. The public institutions have more or less collapsed. They're standing physically, but their aesthetic wealth has become inaccessible because there is no outreach program of any consequence. There is no attempt to rearrange it. All museums keep on rearranging their displays and things like that. Nothing. Once the thing is displayed in a particular place, it remains there. There's nobody to think in a new way.
Is it something had to do with that spirit of questioning and ideas, and then once we are not actually encouraging that in society?
Yes, I mean, you see, art makes you ask questions, and these questions are both philosophical, metaphysical, spiritual, intellectual, moral. What is beauty? How is beauty created? Is beauty a given, or beauty is an artifact? Why? I mean, in our own tradition, we had Vibhatsras, we have Raudras, which are, I mean, which are not exactly very beautiful emotions.
Something to relish, yeah,
but they are there. Now, why these? And through them, you start questioning the status quo. Whatever is given to you, you start re-examining it. Is this what I deserve? Or is there something that is being denied to me? All these questions will arise to you the moment you are responding to art. Because these are the questions the art has always been asking. So, a civil society which reduces art at best to decorative functions, to something which is merely an appendage, which doesn't have substance. The notion that art has actually no substance, no content. It's all form.
Yeah.
Now, all these notions are so deep rooted, and the education system has created these notions in a big way that you cannot expect a civil society which is commensurate with the artistic initiatives and artistic imagination and artistic innovations.
And in both the lights, then, being from Raza Foundation and talking about the society as we have today, how do you see the current and forthcoming uh, future of visual arts in India?
Well, I must say that visual arts, luckily, have liberated themselves from the clutches of the public institutions. So today, Lalit Kala Academy and such other academies and such other institutions no longer exist in the imagination of the artists. They are on the periphery because the visual arts have been able to create a domain of their own, more importantly, a market. So they are not bothered. Artists are not bothered whether who is the chairman of Lalit Kala Academy, what is happening. Only the mediocres and the third raters and the untalented would veer towards such institutions. No significant artist would bother. However, the public institutions cannot be relieved of their duties towards arts. But then who's going to question them? Today, the media has completely withdrawn from the arts, uh, whether newspapers or electronic channels or what you
I think
have.
it's collapsed. There's no such like
Huh?
responsible, good media, good journalism. That way is not happening
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah. So, the danger that exists, in spite of the fact that there's a market and there's a possibility that any number of young people who are taking to visual arts as a vocation, all this is very fine. But there is a glaring lack of criticality. Now, if all critical essays are commissioned by galleries, then obviously the critic is not going to criticize
Sure.
because he has been paid for, she has been paid for. So there is a lack of criticality. And artistic activity in modern times, in absence of criticality, is bound to become peripheral, bound to lose meaning and substance, bound to remain shallow and superficial. So that danger remains. It's a situation of deep despair, quite frankly. But then the only way you can survive as a human being is against all odds. Keep on dreaming, keep on hoping. So, as an old man, I have not given up hope. I have not given up dreams, although in actual life, there's very little to base them on.
Yeah, I mean, in 40 years, things have changed so much as we're talking about. We'll finish this interview with Ashokji reading his poems around uh, painters, Raza Sahab, Swaminathan, and Hussain.
This was written when I was still in Sagar, my hometown, and I had never seen uh, any painting. A painting was reproduced in Kalpana Hussain. So it's called Hussain के एक चित्र की अचानक याद उजाले की दो गहरी लाल आंखें मुड़ गईं उस सड़क पर जो मेरे घर के अंधेरे के पास से गुजरती है तालाब पर सोए धुंध में खिलखिला कर एक पूरी हंसी हंसता है कोई पेड़ों की अंधेरी कतारों के शिखरों पर हंसता है कोई गिरता जाता है आकाश काला घर मेरा उभरता है डूबता है अंधेरे में सड़क पर गहन लाल आंखों से छूटकर एक मध्यम पीली रोशनी में लगातार
क्या बात.
uh, many years ago, before Swami came to Bhopal, uh, this is a poem, Achal Chudiya, उड़ती चट्टान. चट्टान चाहती है कि वो भी उड़ सके चिड़िया की तरह आसमान में उधर घाटी के पार के संसार को वो भी देखाए फुदक कर छूकर पर चिड़िया नहीं चाहती कि वो अदला बली करे चट्टान से और उसकी तरह स्थिर रहकर सदियों तक देखे सिर्फ नीला आसमान और दूसरी चट्टानें. फिर भी चिड़िया अचल है चट्टान की तरह चिड़िया की तरह उड़ान भरती है चट्टान चट्टान के ऊपर बैठी है नहीं बैठी है एक उड़ती हुई चिड़िया एक अचल चिड़िया. राजा साहब जब 80 बरस के हुए तो तब तक मैं उनको जानते हुए करीब 15 साल हो गए थे।
ये दोनों कविताएं जो थी शायद वो शुरुआती समय की थी और
और
उनको
ये
जानने और जानने से पहले की कविता।
तो ये रजा का समय। मैं उठाता हूँ नाम मध्य प्रदेश के वन भूगोल से, ककैया, बाबरिया, बचई, मंडला, दमोह, नरसिंहपुर, और वे तुम्हारे आकाश में ओस भींगी वनस्पतियों से झिलमिलाते जगमगाते हैं, जैसे तुम्हारी आदिम आत्मा की वर्णमाला के कुछ आलोकित अक्षर हों। मुझे सुनाई नहीं देती बचपन के जंगल से घर की दरार में दाखिल होती सांप की सरसराहट या बरामदे में सरकता बिच्छू का डंक, लेकिन प्रार्थनाओं की तरह छा जाते हैं देहाती स्कूल के बरामदे में रटे जा रहे पहाड़े या एक दुबली सी हिंदी पाठ्य पुस्तक से दोहराए जा रहे तुलसी, कबीर, रहीम के भक्ति पद्य। जंगल में रहते हैं साथ भय और सुंदरता। घर के आत्मीय अंधेरों में जब तक कौन जाते हैं जुगनू। जंगल में फैली धुंध या कि पत्तियों के जलने से फैल गया धुआं, जिसमें एक फॉरेस्ट गार्ड के साथ तुम जा रहे हो मंडला में महात्मा गांधी को देखने, एक जनसभा को संबोधित करते हुए, और बरसों बाद जैसे वही छवि रोकती है तुम्हें अपने दूसरे भाइयों और पहली पत्नी की तरह बंटवारे के बाद उस तरफ जाने से। तुम्हारे सख्त और ईमानदार पिता सिखाते हैं तुम्हें 5 वक्त की नमाज की महिमा, और बगल के हनुमान मंदिर में तुम सुनते हो रामचरितमानस का पाठ। पेरिस के चर्च में तुम झुकते हो प्रार्थना में। कौन जानता था, शायद तुम भी नहीं, एक दिन रंग और आकार तुम्हारी प्रार्थना के मौन शब्द होंगे। कि जंगल में चहचहाती चिड़ियां, जब तक गांव वालों को भयाक्रांत करने वाले तेंदुओं की हुंकार, और अंधेरी रात में आती नदी में चढ़ती बाढ़ के पानी की आवाज, सब मिलाकर एक प्रार्थना थी कि तुम्हें रचने का, खोजने और पाने का, जहां भी रहो वहां दूसरे के काम आने का वरदान मिले। एक ऐसा वरदान जिसका किसी को पता न था, लेकिन हमेशा गर्माहट बनी रही आत्मा के ताप की और उसी के अबूझ भय की। जब तुम दिव्य शक्तियों का आह्वान करते हो तो वही वरदान अदृश्य झरता है, जैसे बारिश के बाद हरसिंगार के फूल सुबह सुबह रोज झरते हैं और नीचे की वृत्ताकार जगह को कुछ सफेद, थोड़ा सा नारंगी और थोड़ी देर के लिए सुगंधित करते हुए। हम वही पाते हैं जो हमने दिया था, भले बहुत पहले, याद नहीं किसको। पत्थर का रंग बहुत धीरे बदलता है, चेहरे का रंग कब बदल गया यह अक्सर याद रखना कठिन है। अंधेरी जड़ों का धरती में गहरे धसे हुए भी होता है अपना रंग। जल वनस्पतियां अतल तक पहुंचकर भी अपने रंगों में झिलमिलाती हैं। राग में कोई स्वर तभी दमकता है जब उसे गायक रंग देता है अपने निजी दुख में। बचपन का फूला रंग क्या लौटता है बुढ़ापे में? क्या युवा रंग फिर जगमगाता है किसी दुस्वप्न में? क्या प्रेम का, एकांत का, ललक और छाह का रंग बचता है आयु के धूप छाही वितान में? अंधेरे पर लगा रंग चुपके से बुदबुदाता है, फर्श पर पड़े ट्यूब के किसी रंग से। एक रंग रेंगता हुआ ईजल तक पहुंचकर धूमिल हो जाता है। एक रंग अपनी जगह से अदृश्य पर दस्तक देता है। एक रंग रेखा पर धीरे धीरे धार धार चलता हुआ पहुंचता है वृत्त में। एक रंग पत्तियों की तरह कांपता हुआ बढ़ता है। एक रंग शब्द की तरह अपने विन्यास के लिए विकल होता है। एक रंग अपनी जगह बिना रोशन हुए बुझ जाता है। रंगों के इस घमासान में, रंगों के इस बियाबान में, रंग शुद्ध, रंग शांत, तुम खड़े हो, एक रंग दग्ध मनुष्य, निर्मल, उज्जवल, सजल, और मैं अपने शब्दों के उजाले में देख रहा हूँ कि पृथ्वी एक बारगी अपना रंग बदल रही है, जैसे वो आकाश हो, पवन हो, अग्नि या जल हो। इतिहास में गुमसुम सा रखा है तुम्हारे स्टूडियो में पड़ा प्रागैतिहासिक पत्थर। काठ की स्त्री मूर्त सदियों के पार तुम्हारी दीवार पर लटकी हुई रोज तुम्हें देखती है अपने घुटनों के बल बैठकर रंग लगाते हुए, या रिल्के की कविता की पंक्तियां अस्फुट दोहराते हुए, नर्मदा का सच अजस्र समय बहकर जैसे हर दिन तुम्हारी उंगलियों को छूता और शांत हो जाता है। यातना, करुणा और क्रांति के कगारों को तोड़ता हुआ पेरिस का उच्छल फ्रेंच समय तुम्हारी खिड़की पर कभी धूप या कभी कोहरे और धुंध सा, कभी अंधेरे सा छा जाता है। तुम अविचलित लेकिन उद्विग्न, मौन लेकिन उत्कट, बूढ़े लेकिन झुके हुए खोजते रहे हो बीज, अंकुरण, प्रस्फुटन, वृक्ष, पत्तियां, त्रिभुज, बिंदु, विकिरण। समय उठाता है तुम्हारे बिना देखे या जाने, तुम्हारी ही संग्रह से गणेश और शालिग्राम की बटैया, एक आरती, एक जैन पांडुलिपि का प्राचीन पृष्ठ, कुरान की आयत का एक पन्ना, और उन्हें एक पूरी इबारत की तरह पढ़ता है, जैसे उसमें छिपा है तुम्हारे वो होने का रहस्य जो तुम हो, अपनी आयु, अपने रंगों, अपने समय से परे। समय बचपन नहीं है, उसमें सजाए तो जा सकते हैं खिलौने, बीज, पत्थर, धागे और चिंधियां, लेकिन वो उन्हें सहेज कर न रख पाता है, न याद ही कर सकता है। समय प्राइमरी स्कूल की देहाती इमारत का बरामदा नहीं है, जिसमें तुम्हारे अध्यापक ने दीवार पर एक बिंदु बनाया था और तुम्हें सब कुछ भूल कर उस पर नजर एकाग्र करने को कहा था। तुम उसी दूर के बिंदु को बार बार छूते हो, जैसे तुम्हारे छूने से ही उपजता है सारा संसार। समय सड़क पर खुलने वाली खिड़की नहीं है, तुम कभी कभी उसे खोलकर धूप आने देते हो या अंदाजा करते कि बाहर कितनी हवा और ठंड है, लेकिन उससे और कुछ नहीं आता तुम्हारे रंगों या आकारों में। समय पेड़ों झाड़ियों से गिरा पत्थर का मकान नहीं है, तुम उसमें रखी पत्थर की भारी मेज पर कभी बिछाते हो कागज, कभी अपनी आकांक्षा, कभी अपने जीवन का इकट्ठा हुआ सारा अवसाद, लेकिन तुम नहीं रह पाते उसमें, क्योंकि तुम बसे हो अमिट रंगों में, उनकी द्युतियों में, उनकी परतों के बीच स्पंदित अंधेरों में। समय जो करता है फेर बदल, बनाता बिगाड़ता है मनचाहे आकार, पुकारता और गाता है, हाँफता और झुंझलाता है, तुम उससे अप्रभावित हो, जैसे समय तुम्हारे लिए है ही नहीं। कविता की पंक्तियां तो भरती हैं तुम्हारे चित्रों में, उनके विन्यास में समय के लिए जगह नहीं। समय सितेदा कुआं की 16वीं शताब्दी की इमारत में बढ़ी सीढ़ियां नहीं है, अपने पड़ोस के बाजार में सौदा सुलफ लाने जाते हुए। समय तुम्हारे घर के सामने के बरामदे में बसी चुप्पी है, समय तुम्हारे ब्रश से छिटक गया एक महीन बाल है, समय तुम्हारी आंखों में रहस्य की प्रतीक्षा है, समय त्वचा का कंपन है, तुम समय इसके बाहर बिना किसी हलचल के जा रहे हो, समय अनेक बार रंग भरे हाथों से पोंछा गया कपड़ा है, समय दमोह के कुटेरा तालाब के किनारे पड़ी नांदी की मूर्ति है, जो तुम्हें आज तक अपलक देख रही है, जैसे तुम एक अमिट बिंदु हो। जंगल की एक पगडंडी पर पत्थरों पटी सड़क के किनारे, दूर किसी ऊंची इमारत की खिड़की से कविता की किसी अधभूली पंक्ति में, आकारों के क्षुब्ध सुनसान में बच्चों की तरह खिलखिलाते हैं रंग, धीरे धीरे बदल जाते हैं आंसुओं में, ओस में, कामना के उत्तप्त जल में। समय पर एक लकीर खिंच जाती है, आग की तरह जलती जगमगाती हुई। संसार स्थगित होता है, अपनी रंगीन आभा में द्योतित होता है और सुंदरता की कगार पर पल भर के लिए थम जाता है। रंगों को कहाँ पता था कि उनमें प्रार्थना बसी है, ज्यामिति को आभास तक नहीं था कि उनमें प्रार्थना का विन्यास है। चित्र कहाँ जानता था कि वो प्रार्थना पुस्तक का एक पृष्ठ है। तुम अपने घुटनों के बल न भी बैठे हो, तुम्हारा माथा विनय में न भी झुका हो, तुम्हारी उंगलियां सब कुछ को भूल कर सिर्फ रंगों से क्यों न उलझी हो, तुम हर समय प्रार्थना में हो, क्योंकि ये सारा संसार तुम्हारे लिए एक असमाप्य प्रार्थना है, जिसमें तुम बहुत हिचक के साथ कुछ नए शब्द भर जोड़ रहे हो। आत्मा के ताप में राख होकर भी बची रहती है इच्छाएं, चित्रों में खर्च होने के बाद भी बचे रहते हैं शब्द, प्रार्थना में लुप्त होने के बाद भी बची रहती है हृदय की पुकार। हम उस बचे हुए से जो समय के पार बचा रहेगा, काल के प्रतिघात के बावजूद उसका अभिषेक करते हैं। समय से घायल हाथों से हम जो कालातीत है उसका अभिषेक करें।